episode number 301 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast, a space where you can find empowerment on your fertility journey. I'm your host, Michelle Orovitz, and I wanted to pop in before we get started to mention that if you haven't already heard, I've released my new book, The Way of Fertility, that has been created for those who have tried everything to conceive and are simply unsure of what else they can do. This book shares tried and true wisdom from ancient teachings along with modern research that supports much of what has been taught for centuries. It has been made with love, and the stories shared will serve to awaken hope within you. If you'd like to give it a test drive, I offer the first chapter for free, and you can find a link with more information in the episode notes. I would also like to extend an invitation to you as part of our beautiful community to share your thoughts and experiences by leaving a review of the podcast. Your words have incredible power to inspire others who are also seeking comfort on their fertility journey. And for anyone who has already left a review, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome back to the podcast, Rosanne.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. It's such a good place to be.
Yes, so excited to have you back. I know I love you if I have you this many times back to the podcast. So I want to talk about your upcoming book that is coming out,
Yes.
The Feminine Fertility Cure. But I also want to talk about, maybe before that, your tour that you just had but are continuing soon.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so we started this year in March. We started the Fearlessly Fertile Live World Tour, which is kind of hilarious because I was thinking to myself, it was last October when this idea came to mind. So October 2023, and then we start all of the stuff that goes into it by January 2024. So I'm a pretty quick mover. Like when I make a
Amazing. You
decision,
are, man.
but let's just go on a world tour. And it was funny because the thought behind all this, leading up to the book and everything else that I'm doing right now, was a desire to really connect with the women who love the work that I do, or who are curious, or maybe just starting their fertility journey. But I was pretty sick of sitting behind my computer and being just disconnected, right? Like you and I both know, because we're cool and we do this work, is that we know we're energetically connected. But I think there's something dramatically different and rich and really colorful and just super interesting about connecting with people in person. And so I just said, fuck it, let's go do this. And I'm like, I don't know how to do a world tour, but I do know how to travel. The team and I just sat down together and kind of mapped out the cities where we thought we could have the most impact. And we just started traveling. So it's not like I had any experience prior to actually doing it, but I think doing it is the best possible teacher. So we started on the West Coast of the United States. We did San Francisco, LA, San Diego, and then we went on to the East Coast, where we did DC, New York, New York City, and then we went up to Buffalo because, interestingly enough, I have a sizable audience in Buffalo, New York, and then we went to Toronto and Montreal. And all of those locations were just fantastic. Just getting to hug my ladies, hold their babies, and really see the fruit of what I put out in the world, but more importantly, how women take that message, apply it to their own lives, and are creating these insane results. So it was from the East Coast. We came home to Texas for a couple weeks and then got back out on the road, and we started in Europe in May. So we did, oh my gosh, it feels like it was just a few weeks ago. It feels like, we got back on June 3rd. But we were in Florence, Paris, London, Manchester, Birmingham, and we're in Edinburgh. And then, it was like boom, 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 boom.
That's awesome.
I tell you, but it was great. When we were filming the whole thing, our intention is to complete a documentary on the work that I do and the impact and all of that good stuff to really inspire women to look beyond their current circumstances and stay focused on their vision for their lives. Because I met so many women along the way. Some women that I had never met, some women who had just read the book, or some women who were just listening to the podcast that were creating such crazy results. And it's hard to wrap your head around. So that was also like, that was part of the intention, was to get back into the trenches, but it was also to see and assess for myself what the impact could be, so that I could get better at what I do, so I can really see, how can I take this to the next level, how can I serve at a higher level, or what the vision might be. So it's been wild, it's been really crazy. And actually, at the time of this recording, in a couple weeks I'll be in Chicago, and then we have a few dates in here in Texas, and then January we're looking at New Zealand, Australia, Singapore,
I love
Dubai.
that. Oh my God,
So,
that is it's
so it's
just
a legit
so
world
freaking.
tour. Yeah.
And I love your dedication. I know you talk about like hundreds of thousands of women that you're gonna like help them conceive. I don't know if it already happened. I don't like at this point, but I know that you really have such a passion about spreading this message and empowering so many women, so many couples. And how did you decide on the locations, first of all? Did you do it based on like a survey of some people, like knowing where they live or the audience?
Well, it was sort of both, where I'm looking at, okay, what are the major metropolitan areas? And so it wasn't like, it was strategic from that point, but it also had to be cities I was interested in going to. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm not interested, I don't go.
Yeah.
And if I'm not interested, my energy's low. I can't, because the energy in
I
the
can't
room.
imagine your energy being low because I feel like you're so aligned. You would never do anything that wouldn't
Yeah,
be.
well, I mean, but that's kind of part of it, is
Yeah.
that, but the energy, like that I was getting from being in all of these different places, and it was because I consciously chose them and was excited about them, and the women showed up. Like,
Amazing.
it was really cool. It was really, really cool, to see and to watch that growth, and really, because it's kind of funny, because I still see myself as, that former prosecutor with this idea, but so many years later, it's not just an idea, it's an actual movement, it's a phenomenon.
Hmm.
So it was exciting, and it was such a gift. It was very humbling, I would say, is another thing that came up. It was very humbling to see how, when women make a decision, and how, when women are really committed to the dream, that they can make anything happen. I mean, I sat there with women who had been told so many different times and in so many different ways that having a baby was impossible. I mean, women who had stillbirths, women who had devastating losses, second trimester losses,
Hmm.
that were in the room holding babies. I mean,
Wow.
it was breathtaking, and I don't think I have fully processed it. Like, because I'm always on the go. I'm always like kind of moving through to the next project. But it was, when I have quiet moments, which I do have, but when I sit and really think of the enormity of it, it's extremely humbling, and it's a real testament to the human spirit. I mean,
I
that's
love that.
I mean, the reason why I do this work is, one, I find it exciting and I love learning. I'm a perpetual student. I love keeping my edge sharp, but it's also like, I really love watching these women wake up to their own power, because
Oof.
that's at the essence of what I do.
I love that. I love that. And I think that that's why I love you so much. I truly do because I feel uh, I could really relate to that because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just, it's freaking amazing. There's nothing like it because people do have power. I think that seeing people not know that they have that is painful. And you want to make sure that everybody that you really come into contact realizes just how powerful they are. So I'm sure, based on what you're telling me, that you have some incredible stories. So if anything jumps out, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, but we share that commonality in the work that we do, is that it is the essence of what we're doing is trying to, well, and I only try to wake up people that want to be awake.
Hmm.
So
You
much
have
like
to. You
you.
can't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't force it.
Yeah, much like you, is that when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Hmm.
And that's what we're there to do based on our expertise, our training, our background, our commitment. We come in and we say, hey, there is another way, and let me show you this modality. And because that's, people have to understand that fertility is like a mosaic. They are all these different pieces, and no
Hmm.
matter how you arrange those pieces, you are always the foundation. You are always the glue that keeps everything together. So when you are not aligned, or when you have a belief system that keeps you stuck repeating old patterns, then it doesn't matter. It's funny, we were talking about this earlier. But you can't out supplement, you can't out yoga, you cannot out treat a belief that says you can't have what you want, or you're not worthy of what you want. So, or that you have no power, essentially. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's all lies. I mean, think about what we were talking about before about the energy in our bodies, the meridians, all these things. When we were talking about your book, like, it is the essence of saying you have the power.
Hmm.
So anything that separates you from that reality is no good. So this work is really about coming back to understanding that you are the foundation. And once you have that foundation, and then you add the beauty of what you do, or the beauty of what other people do, and medicine and all these other things, you can get to a place where you realize that you're making these things that you want, you're making them your reality.
Hmm.
Baby, home, car, profession, all of these things that come together to create a really full life. So it's yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty
I
cool
just
shit.
had a vision in my head as you were telling me that, of like a computer. You can have like state of the art parts and everything put together, but if the program is not installed, that is going to help you get from A to Z.
Yeah, no,
And
that's a
it's,
beautiful
it's
metaphor. That's like the
yeah,
perfect metaphor. I'm going to borrow that. I'm going
take
to
it,
borrow
take
it.
it.
I'm going to say
It's a
thank you,
gift.
Michelle Orovitz, for this amazing visual here, because
Yes.
it fucking makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And that's the physical parts itself is doing all the things, out supplementing and all of that for sure. And so let's talk. I'm very excited to talk about this, the feminine fertility cure.
Duh.
Tell us everything.
Okay, so this book is many years in the making. So, and it
Those are
actually
always the best ones.
yes, yes, yes. Well, and it was funny because I actually can thank Chinese medicine for this, because when I was on my own journey, I had no idea I was stuck in my masculine, or my yang, as you would say it. And I thought I was kind of a weirdo. I just thought, you know what, I got this problem. Like, I'm not able to receive. I On the exterior, I'm, yeah, I'm feminine. I wear makeup, I got cute clothes, I get my nails done and all that. I had all the physical outward trappings of femininity, but my energy was decidedly masculine. Now, I was starting to ask questions about why that was. At first I thought, well, it's just my profession. As a prosecutor, it's a decidedly masculine
Hmm.
profession. You have to armor up. You're going into a courtroom, possibly with a homicidal maniac or a serial rapist. You got to have your armor up. But what I found out is that the armor was never coming off. And as I started, when I got on my journey, and then I started teaching other women what I had learned, and then I left my work as a prosecutor and really went full throttle into what I do, I started seeing a pattern that a lot of other women I was serving also had this problem with a disconnection to their femininity.
Hmm.
And I observed it for a while, and I'm like, okay, let me just take note of this. Let me just take note. I was like, well, there's something to this, this idea of conceiving is all about receiving. And if we're stuck in our masculine and disconnected from our feminine, how the hell are we ever going to receive
Mm-hmm.
from our partner and conceive? So I really started to take note. And because I serve such lovably type A, recovering, control freaky professional women, at the top of their game who are primarily in more professions, it so many of us get stuck. And I'm like, well, how the fuck do we get unstuck? And
Mm-hmm.
then I started to work through that. I looked at what I was doing. How was I reconnecting with my feminine? And I'm like, okay, so let me take what I learned, start teaching it. Let me start studying more. Let me explore more of this feminine. So when I started incorporating this kind of work into what I was doing, I saw the results skyrocket
Mm.
within women to help them reconnect to the feminine. But what was more interesting, and the questions that I started answering with this book, The Feminine Fertility Cure, was where the hell did this start? Because you don't just have a couple generations of women completely disconnected to their feminine. Where did this start? So I
Mm-hmm.
started doing research, and this is where it gets super interesting. I'm like, if you look, and I only speak about the United States because that's where I live, that's what I know, that's a culture I was raised in. But if you look at what has happened to women ever since the women's movement, it's actually quite shocking. And through the research and watching it myself and being caught up in it myself, we really got this message that since the women's movement in the 1960s, I use in my book the Kennedy administration as kind of this line of demarcation. That post the Kennedy administration in the United States, there was a concerted effort to masculinize women, to take us away from our feminine nature. And we were sold, well, I don't really call it sold, I call it a fucking scam in my book. We were scammed out of our femininity because what we were told is that, yeah, get out in the workplace, get yourself out of the shackles of domesticity and you're going to be free. But what
Mm-hmm.
what was really happening was a systematic masculinization. So we were taken away from our feminine nature and told that you have to work hard, you have to dress like a man, you have to pack up your emotions, you have to conform, separate yourself from your spirituality, and femininity is weak. We started to see all of these things that if you wanted to be a successful woman who represents progress, be more like a man. And the data is undeniable. It's undeniable. Like, because you think about it, and of course, I went into a profession that, as like I said before, as a prosecutor, is very masculine. There's nothing feminine about anything that you're doing there. And when you spend long enough in that masculine mode, you get disconnected from the feminine. You don't even know what it is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be surprised, Michelle, how many physicians, surgeons, lawyers, engineers that I work with, like when I say the feminine, there's like this giant question mark over their head. Like, what? But when you look at some of the propaganda that we were fed as, anyone born post Kennedy administration, the idea was is that in order for you to be free and to have progress, you got to go into life in a certain way, and it's decidedly masculine. So, what this book is about is educating women about basically how that happened, educating about what the masculine is, what the feminine is, how it directly connects to fertility. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't care, like, I don't care what anyone says. Having a baby is the most fucking feminine thing you will ever do. And this is why trying to do it from young in your terms or like a man in mine, I
Mm-hmm.
watch women try to get pregnant like a man all the time and men don't get pregnant. Okay. We as women do. And when you're trying to do a decidedly feminine thing like a man, you find yourself with problems. And another thing about the masculine, which, and I've got nothing on the masculine, I've got no complaint because the masculine and the feminine work synergistically. You and I know
Mm-hmm.
this. One is not better than the other. That's not what I'm saying here. But what this work is about and what I get into in this book is really encouraging women to reclaim. It
Mm-hmm.
is all about reclamation.
Yeah.
Reclaim your feminine nature, because
Right.
it's from the feminine that you are going to heal what ails you when it comes to your fertility. Because when you think about the masculine, it's go, go, go,
Mm-hmm.
do. You are not enough. You just work harder, do more, be more perfect, and this will happen. The feminine, I mean, think about what the feminine stands for. It's the spiritual, it's the nurturing, it's the
Creative.
fertility. Yeah, it's the creative, it's the surrendered, it's the open, it's the receptive, all of those things. I mean, those are some important things when you're trying to conceive.
Yep.
But when we're stuck in man mode, we are completely cut off from that. And then we keep beating our head up against a wall trying to figure out why I have so much inflammation. Why do I have all this stuck energy? Why do I feel like nothing's moving? It's because you're stuck in man mode. And I want to say this because this, I want to be super clear. Like, this book is not political at all. Some will probably read this book and accuse me of being anti feminist, but I come from the perspective, I look at feminism as in a very legalistic way, that men and women have equal rights. That's it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, anything beyond that starts to get far afield. People abuse it, all this other stuff. So I come from the perspective that, because around that time people will say, well, you don't think that was a good time because this is when, feminism rose up. Well, yeah, and so did a lot of other things. Okay. So I'm looking at this strictly from when we look at feminism and believing that men and women have equal rights under the law. And we say that a woman deserves to have a right to choose in just about everything in her life. And that also includes staying feminine, right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
messaging that we got was the only way to be successful is to act more like a man.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this, Michelle. So I'm 50, and I do not recall ever hearing messaging that staying home and having babies and being in a relationship was a legitimate option. The only thing I ever heard was leave the house, never depend on a man,
Mm-hmm.
get an education, make a bunch of money, and be untouchable. Right? That was the paradigm of
You see
progress.
it everywhere. You see it on TV shows, on movies, like everywhere.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
that was the paradigm of progress and success. And think about it. I remember, and this just shows how deep the programming is. I remember a girl in my high school class who wanted to get married and have babies. And I remember thinking, poor thing, that's a life thrown away. Like, how anti woman is that shit? I mean, that's how deep the programming was. And I thought I was the quote unquote feminist back then, not respecting that woman's desire and her otherwise legitimate choice to live her life with traditional feminine pursuits,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the whole point of this is not to say it's bad to have a profession or it's bad to stay at home. It's none of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
a masculine paradigm that tries to force us into choosing
Right. Yeah. Good
rather
point.
than saying, okay, we as creative, resourceful, and whole women get to move through those things. Like, you might do time as a prosecutor, you might do time as a physician, and then decide that your soul is saying, I really want to go home. I want to get pregnant. I want to have babies and chickens and a garden. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's legit.
Right.
But yet, so much of the messaging up to this point has been that is the lesser choice. Like, the feminine is the lesser choice, or the feminine is the weak. And
Mm-hmm.
so, everything that I'm talking about in this book is saying, look, sister, your fertility and your issues with fertility right now are a wake up call. It's a wake up call to come home to the fucking feminine, because
Mm-hmm.
your femininity, your feminine is your fertility superpower.
I love that. Oh my God. So many things come to mind. And I'm thinking about the yin and the yang. Like, imagine the yin and the yang start arguing with each other or like fighting like each other's nature. Well, you should be like this. Or you should be, no, like everything in nature has the yin and they need to be there. They need to be there. Otherwise, This is what my professor told me when we first learned about it. Like when yin and yang separate, there is death, because we need
Mm.
the yin and yang for vitality.
Oh,
So we
that's so
need
good.
that. And it's like really to kind of bring it to that. And I am going to talk science right now, because in so there's been a couple of studies that I saw about having sex outside of the fertile window. When women are more sexually active, which they naturally would be if they just felt connected with their partner, it's just like a natural tendency. But what happens physiologically is when they are more sexually active, unprotected, even outside of the fertile window into the luteal phase, you know what happens? A woman's immune system starts to change from what it was before. And what happens is the immune system starts to bring its arms down a little bit more. It starts to become more receptive, more calm. It lowers itself. It stops being in such a fight mode, ready to attack. And that is by design. When it does that, when it knows, okay, I'm in receptive mode here, we're having more sex, I'm getting familiar with the sperm, I can allow it in, so that this isn't an invader. I'm receiving, inviting, allowing. So this is literally like what you're telling me here. Male immune systems don't do that, because they don't
Mm.
receive. They're putting out. It's a different energy, it's a different flow, it's a different direction.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that you shared that because, you know, it's a really warped thing that we have gotten into as women. And when you think about it, it really is insidious. Like, why? I mean, we even see this today because we were talking about, like, if we look at the women's movement from the 1960s, like, the intention was good. Of course, we want women to have equal rights under the law as men. That's obvious. That's basic. It's a human right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at how that got warped, and then it's like, okay, well, if you really want to be free, get out of the house, do all this stuff, start acting like a man. You know, we even see images in media and film and all this other stuff of women being, you know, having sex like men, which is wildly unnatural. Like that's not our natural state as women to be like predators in
We
that
have
sense, you know.
more oxytocin, and
Yeah,
it actually is meant to connect us more to one
right.
person.
Right. Right. And then, you know, we see this ripple effect that it's had. And we look at since about 1970, and women will have to take a look at the book to get the dates right. I've so many dates and numbers, you know,
Yeah.
stuck in my head from having done the research. But it was around 1970 that we started to track women's happiness on a consistent basis. So we have data going back to approximately 19 from 1970 to about 2006 that tracks with not only did the birth rate go down because we have things like you know, no fault divorce, we have the advent of birth control, abortion being legal, all of these things, these new cultural things that happen, that as women left the home, pursued education, made more money, had fewer children, there's actually an inverse relationship. So the more educated a woman became and pursued those more masculine results, the less happy she became. And I believe the number is 35%.
Oh,
Happiness has
wow.
dropped by 35% the more educated that we became and the more separated from the home. Now, what's
Mm.
funny is this research that came out of the Wharton School of Business showing that, like, is the antithesis of what we were sold about the women's movement, that we would be happier, when the data shows quite opposite. You know, and then you look at the issues that we have today with dismal and terrifying birth rates. You know, we went from 1 in 8 couples struggling with fertility to 1 in
Hmm.
5.
Hmm. That's crazy.
We
Yeah.
I think the average woman today, I think the number was hovering about 1.7 children per woman. That's not even sustainable population growth at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many things that, and there's so many things that go into it. I'm not just saying that it's because we all become masculine. There's also plastics in our food. There's
Mm-hmm.
also
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
glyphosate and rampant, overuse of medications and all kinds of, fluoride in the water. I'm going to put my tin foil hat on right now. People can see it.
Yeah.
Um, but
The
it's actually not.
radiation, everything.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much stuff that has changed, but you can't deny that our attitudes have changed. And, women are having babies later. And I think that's a beautiful thing, but it also is indicative of a systemic cultural shift to say that, well, you don't have babies until you've made this much money, you've had this much education, you've done XYZ, you've published this number of papers. It's in a sense, like, I really feel like women have been conditioned away from having the highest degree of choice. And it's heartbreaking. And then when women finally are in their 40s and they're trying to have babies, they go into the fertility world hearing that the window is closed
Mm-hmm.
and too bad for you. So it's like
Right, right.
it's like you find yourself getting to this place where you're saying, well, is this all there is? Having babies is not just a fleeting desire, it's a longing. And if it was made, let's just say, like, it's a passe idea to be at home, have babies, and pursue a happy home life. If that was just passe and everyone's beyond it, tell me why the fertility industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. People
Mm-hmm.
still want it. This is why you have women getting to 45,
Yeah.
meeting the right partner, and then longing to have a baby because it's innate in us.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
innate.
yeah.
It's fascinating.
It
It's
is
super.
fascinating. And the fact
Yeah.
that you're really looking at the research and you actually have numbers and percentages, that is what is so cool about this. And I think also, all the messages that we get, oh, you're too old, but do you know what the highest, the Guinness Book of World Records, highest naturally conceived and birthed child, highest
No.
age?
What, maybe in
You're
the
gonna
in
love
60s?
this, and you could use this. Use this all you want, and I know you will because it's so freaking good. 58,
Oh,
58, and
I
it's a
love
woman
it.
from the UK. On Brooks, I believe was her name, and from the UK of all places, where there's a lot of deficiency in vitamin D. But yeah, yeah, she did, and then I think about actually, I remember Tori Quisling had mentioned, she didn't mention the name, but she had mentioned, how like one person breaks the record and then other people hear about that. And then all of a sudden they're breaking the record. And that really goes to the Roger Bannister effect, where they said
Mm.
there's no way you could break that 4 minute mile. And then one person breaks it and then like four others do like within a couple of weeks from that.
Well, yeah, but that's also like a scriptural reality too. I mean, you
Hmm.
look at ancient books, you hear about women being fertile at times. Whether people choose to interpret that as a metaphor or not is their
Hmm.
business, but you hear about women being able to do miraculous things
Hmm.
very late,
Yeah.
allegedly, in life.
Hmm.
And so this is why I wanted to write the book, because I find that when women tap back into their femininity, they tap back into the love of self, they tap back into self-care, they tap back into their truest desires, they
Hmm.
speak them, they rest, they, instead of doing what they should do, they do what they desire to do.
Hmm.
It drops the level of stress and puts them in a more receptive yin mode. And then we
Love
see
that.
women, I mean, I've seen this in my own practice. You see women who were given single digit odds going and getting pregnant with ease when they tap back into their nature.
Hmm.
It's just, it's fascinating. So, like, I had a woman that was in my program who was 52, and what was interesting about her was that she had this longing. She had this longing. She had, she was a successful business owner. She was like, I just don't feel like my life is complete. I'm intended to be a mother. I'm intended to be a mother now. And she pursued this child. And now her son's like probably a year and a half old now. Like, It's just fascinating. And what it required for her to get there was tapping back into that feminine desire. So my objective in this book is to educate women about what the feminine is, show them how it has been programmed out of us, and ultimately what to do to reclaim it. Because we see that once you improve your self care, the stress level goes down. The data shows consistently that when, cortisol levels are high, it takes longer for women to get pregnant, and it negatively impacts results in controlled environments like IVF. Like, they've seen this. They've even tested hair samples. Women with the highest concentrations of cortisol have the biggest struggles. And it's just wild. And so when you think about this from a mindset perspective, and you think about the very masculine messages women have gotten about what success means, it's like when you change your mind about what success looks like and you start looking at it from a feminine perspective,
Hmm.
then you can start changing the game. And you can heal yourself, you can heal your fertility, and you'll do that through a more open mind, more receptive look at different opportunities and different things that come up. So it just gives us the ability to tap into our innate feminine nature so we can do the innately feminine fucking thing that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's the essence of what the book is about. And women can find the book anywhere they books are sold, and it'll be out August 2nd.
I love that. And so, question, as far as momentum goes, because I know that when we're in a path, we're on a path and we just keep going, 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 and say we're like on a masculine path or we've been conditioned, I find that it's just like you start to take a momentum and it's very hard to switch gears and
Mm.
shift back, even if it is our nature. So, just if anybody's listening, what are some of your thoughts or anything you want to share about like really getting to that place of switching gears?
Okay, one of the greatest ways to switch gears is to look at your fucking results. If you do not like your results, you have to have the humility and the open heartedness to say, what I am doing is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that from a loving perspective. Like, I don't look at things not working or mistakes or things that have happened in a negative way, right? They're just
It's
new.
misalignment.
Yeah, and it's more nudges in the right direction. So if you don't like the result that you're getting, then you have to ask yourself, what isn't lined up here? What can I do better from a loving perspective, from the perspective of commitment to what I say I want? And one of the first steps is, how connected am I to my feminine? Or what is my thought process? What are my thoughts telling me? Are my thoughts sounding more like a man, like, wagging the finger saying, you're not enough, this is stupid, why are you doing this? It's decidedly more masculine, right? When we're in our feminine, there's going to be nurturing that's saying, hey, babe, you know what? This isn't working. Let's look at some other options, right? It's decidedly different in energy. So, number one, if you want to switch gears, look at your result. From a completely dispassionate place, just say, hey, is what I'm doing working? And if it is not, what can I do differently? That's like the first step, is that level of awareness. And then the second step would be to decide to be different. Now, I know that that may sound vague, but in some ways it kind of is, because for everyone the pursuit is going to be different. What do I need to do different is going to look different for everybody. I come from the perspective that it all starts with us. It all starts with the mind, because when your mind is lined up, then you'll do the right physical things. You'll pursue different things like your work. You'll pursue, different avenues, and a constellation of new opportunities will show up because you were different. So, number one, look at the result. Number two, give yourself the opportunity, like, hey, what can I do differently here? Truly from a place of, hey, I'm super committed to what I want and I want to get there. So if I can love myself enough through this process and give myself plenty of runway to try things, it's more likely that I'm going to get there than if I keep my narrow vision that there's only one way to get there. Because the feminine is all about the meandering. It's all about the
Yeah.
exploration. If it was as simple, Michelle, as a sperm and an egg coming together, then not one of us would suffer on this journey. But we know that, everybody's different, and the journey is nonlinear.
Hmm.
So it's
Right.
like, open yourself up, try something new, try the feminine fertility here, see if that works for you, because I've seen women around the world tap into this power and create insane results. And it's my sincere hope that women listening will do the same.
I really think that you're doing the right thing for your purpose. Like, I really do. I feel like you are truly activated and doing your purpose and working your purpose, because I feel like you're really making so many transformations happen. And I see it. I mean, it's literally happening around the world, and it is a movement. And this is why I love you so much. And Rosanne, I could keep talking to you for hours. I know you have to go. I would love it if you just tell people how they can find you. Otherwise, I know the book's going to be everywhere books are sold, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, I love you too, Michelle, and I really appreciate the support that you give to my work. And we're such a great pair because our work is so synergistic, and it's just fantastic. And I'm really honored to share that with your audience. And here's the thing: I like to encourage women. Look, trust yourself. Trust yourself. You have this ability to do this, and there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to the feminine. The feminine is your fertility superpower, and the feminine is not just pink and sparkly shit. It's going to be expressed in your own unique way. And the
mhm.
sooner you make up with her, the sooner that you make her
Oh, I love
okay
that.
to be back in the room, she's going to be your BFF. She is your fertility BFF, and she's going to show you the way. So I'm
Mhm.
really excited to get this out in the world. I really hope women receive it with the love that it was written. And yeah,
Beautiful.
thanks for having me on. Thank you for sharing this.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.